When an old, forgotten flip phone suddenly flickered to life, the Miller family's quiet suburban world was instantly shattered by a chilling voice from the grave. 6 months after Leo's tragic disappearance, his younger brother Ethan uncovers a frantic, unread voicemail with a desperate final warning. Whatever you do, lock the basement. Driven by a heartbreaking search for answers, Ethan defies his terrified parents and descends into the pitch-black, forbidden depths beneath their house, unknowingly unleashing a massive, dangerous town conspiracy that powerful elites have killed to keep hidden. Now, as a violent winter storm rages outside, the lights go out, the back door glass shatters, and a shadowy intruder stalks through the dark corridors of their home. Trapped in a high-stakes psychological standoff, the family must make an impossible choice between safety and the ultimate truth before the final sirens wail. Will Ethan find the ultimate justice for his brother, or will the darkness consume them all? Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell right now so you never miss a single second of this thrilling, emotional journey. Before we dive into the next episode, we would love to know more about our incredible community. What city or town are you watching this from tonight? Please drop the name of your hometown in the comments below so we can all connect and get to know each other much closer. The clock on the wall of room 204 didn't tick. It hummed, a low, mechanical drone that seemed to stretch the seconds into agonizing eternities. 6 months had passed since the world shattered, yet walking into Leo's bedroom still felt like stepping into a time capsule frozen on a rainy Tuesday in autumn. Ethan Miller stood at the threshold, his fingers hovering over the brass doorknob, hesitating as he always did. The Ohio winter outside masked the world in a blinding, flawless white. But inside this room, everything remained cast in shades of gray. Leo's varsity jacket still draped carelessly over the back of his desk chair. An open sketchbook lay on the nightstand, its final page displaying a half-finished graphite drawing of the Whispering Woods, the dark trees blending into chaotic, jagged lines where the pencil had abruptly stopped. Ethan took a slow breath, the air smelling faintly of cedarwood and old paper, the distinct scent of his older brother. A heavy, suffocating emptiness pressed against Ethan's chest, a familiar ache that had become his constant shadow since the police knocked on their door that fateful night. His parents had turned into ghosts themselves, moving silently through the downstairs hallways. His home. Ethan sat on the edge of the unmade bed, burying his face in his hands. The silence in the house was deafening, a thick barrier that isolated him from the rest of the living world. He looked at the empty desk, wondering how a person so vibrant, so full of laughter and unyielding curiosity, could just vanish, leaving behind nothing but a quiet room filled with unanswered questions and a lingering, haunting coldness. The lingering, haunting coldness seemed to seep directly from the bedroom walls into Ethan's bones as he finally forced himself to stand up. He needed a distraction, something tangible to anchor his drifting thoughts, so he turned his attention to the stack of dusty cardboard boxes piled in the corner of Leo's closet. These were the remnants of his brother's freshman year at college, packed away by their grieving mother, but never truly sorted. Kneeling on the hardwood floor, Ethan pulled the tape off the largest box, revealing old textbooks, tangled charging cables, and worn-out sneakers. Right at the very bottom, tucked beneath a thick wool blanket, his fingers brushed against something small, metallic, and rigid. He pulled it out, realizing it was an old, scratched blue flip phone, a device Leo had abandoned 3 years ago when he upgraded to a smartphone. On a whim, driven by a sudden surge of desperate nostalgia, Ethan carried the relic back to his own room and plugged it into an ancient charger he found in his desk drawer. The old battery took a long time to respond, but after 10 minutes of anxious waiting, the screen suddenly flickered to life with a dull, pixelated glow. A small flashing envelope icon appeared in the top corner of the screen, indicating a single unread notification from the exact night Leo disappeared.
That single unread notification from the exact night Leo disappeared sent a sharp jolt of adrenaline straight through Ethan's veins. His thumb hovered over the rubber keypad, trembling so violently that he almost dropped the fragile plastic device onto his lap. He pressed the selection button, and a crackling burst of heavy static immediately erupted from the phone's tiny tinny speaker, filling the quiet bedroom with a harsh scratching noise. Then, through the wave of white noise, a voice broke through, breathless, panicked, and undeniably Leo's, stripped entirely of his usual easygoing confidence. "Ethan, if you're reading this, no, listening to this, they're looking in the wrong place," the recording stammered, the sound of rushing wind and rustling leaves audible in the background. "They think I lost my way, but I found what they were hiding, and now they're coming. And Ethan, whatever you do, lock the basement. Don't let it open." The line abruptly went dead with a sharp, metallic click, leaving behind a silence far heavier than the one before. Ethan sat frozen, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird, the cryptic warning echoing in his mind until the room felt completely devoid of oxygen. The cryptic warning echoing in his mind until the room felt completely devoid of oxygen made it impossible for Ethan to sleep that night. He lay wide awake beneath his heavy comforter, staring blankly at the ceiling patterns, while the grandfather clock downstairs struck midnight with slow, mournful tones. Just as the final echo died away, a completely different sound vibrated through the structure of the house, causing Ethan to sit up instantly. It was a faint, rhythmic thump, 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 low and metallic, vibrating directly beneath his bedroom floorboards from the deep recesses of the forbidden earth below. The house had always been quiet at night, but this wasn't the natural settling of old wood or the familiar hum of the heating vents. It sounded like something heavy being dragged across concrete, followed by the distinct, unmistakable rattle of a shifting iron chain. Ethan pressed his ear against the cold floor, his breathing shallow, as he realized the noise was originating from the old basement, a space that had remained securely padlocked since the day his family first moved in to the suburban Ohio property. A space that had remained securely padlocked since the day his family first moved in to the suburban Ohio property suddenly became the center of Ethan's entire universe the following morning. At the breakfast table, the tension was palpable as he watched his father sip black coffee, his eyes fixed blankly on the morning newspaper. "Dad," Ethan started, his voice cracking slightly as he carefully chose his words. "Did Leo ever spend time down in the basement before the accident?" His father froze mid-sip, his knuckles turning white around the porcelain mug before he slammed it down onto the table, his demeanor shifting instantly from distant grief to fierce defensiveness. "That area is off limits, Ethan, and you know the structural foundations are unsafe. I don't want to hear another word about it," his father snapped, his eyes flashing with an intensity Ethan had never seen before. Realizing that a direct approach would yield nothing but walls, Ethan waited until late that afternoon when his parents left the house to run errands in town. Slipping into his father's private study, he searched the top desk drawer until his fingers wrapped around the heavy, rusted brass key that hung from a faded green lanyard. Slipping into his father's private study, he searched the top desk drawer until his fingers wrapped around the heavy, rusted brass key that hung from a faded green lanyard. With the metal cold against his palm, Ethan stood before the heavy wooden basement door at the end of the kitchen hallway, his heart thumping wildly against his ribs. He slid the key into the old padlock, turning it with a loud, echoing click that sounded like a gunshot in the empty house. The door creaked open on protesting hinges, revealing a steep flight of wooden stairs that descended into absolute, velvety darkness. Clutching a small plastic flashlight, Ethan took his first step down, the air growing noticeably colder and crisper with every inch he descended. When his sneakers finally touched the solid concrete floor, he swept the beam of light across the room, expecting to see cobwebs and old storage boxes. Instead,
he found a clean, organized space that looked like a secret workshop, complete with a wooden desk, dozens of historical blueprints pinned to the walls, and a large, reinforced iron chest sitting right in the center of the floor. Instead, he found a clean, organized space that looked like a secret workshop, complete with a wooden desk, dozens of historical blueprints pinned to the walls, and a large, reinforced iron chest sitting right in the center of the floor. Ethan stepped closer to the desk, his flashlight illuminating the large sheets of paper, which he quickly realized were detailed topographic maps of the nearby Whispering Woods. Leo had drawn extensive red lines across the trails, marking specific geographical coordinates with precise annotations and dates that traced back to the months leading up to his disappearance. One particular coordinate was circled multiple times with heavy ink, and when Ethan cross-referenced the markings with the property lines, his breath hitched in his throat. The center of the red circle didn't point toward the deep forest at all. It pointed directly to the exact plot of land where their own house was built. Leo wasn't just exploring the wilderness for fun. He had been systematically tracking a historical secret that led right back to the foundation beneath Ethan's feet. The center of the red circle didn't point toward the deep forest at all. It pointed directly to the exact plot of land where their own house was built. Recognizing that he couldn't solve this massive puzzle entirely on his own, Ethan slipped out of the house later that evening and hurried across the snow-dusted lawn to find Chloe, Leo's closest childhood friend. They sat on her porch swing, wrapped in thick blankets, as Ethan quietly explained the old flip phone, the frantic voicemail, and the bizarre maps hidden beneath the kitchen floorboards. Chloe listened in stunned silence, her eyes wide with a mixture of sorrow and sudden realization as she pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders. "Ethan, a few weeks before he disappeared, Leo told me he found something incredible in the town library's restricted archives," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly in the crisp night air. "He said our town's founding families didn't build their wealth honestly, and that a massive historical injustice had been buried decades ago, involving a hidden vault that legally belonged to your ancestors. He said our town's founding families didn't build their wealth honestly, and that a massive historical injustice had been buried decades ago, involving a hidden vault that legally belonged to your ancestors." Chloe's revelation sent Ethan's mind into a chaotic tailspin, tearing him violently between the logical safety of letting the past remain buried and the emotional pull of uncovering his brother's final mission. When he crept back into his house through the back door, he found his mother standing at the top of the basement stairs, holding the open door with a trembling hand. Ethan braced himself for an angry lecture, but when she turned to face him, her eyes were red-rimmed and swimming with fresh, painful tears. "Please, Ethan, I saw you coming out of there earlier, and I am begging you to lock that door and never go down there again," she sobbed softly, covering her face with her hands. Whatever Leo was looking for, it consumed him completely, and it ultimately took him away from us. I cannot lose you to the same dark obsession. Whatever Leo was looking for, it consumed him completely, and it ultimately took him away from us. I cannot lose you to the same dark obsession. Her tearful plea echoed in Ethan's mind all through the night, but the pull of the mystery was far too strong to ignore, drawing him back down to the secret workshop just after midnight. He knelt beside the heavy iron chest, examining its intricate combination lock under the dim glow of his flashlight, trying to piece together what code Leo would have used. A sudden, sharp scratching noise from above caused him to freeze completely, his muscles locking tight as he slowly tilted his head toward the small, rectangular basement window at ground level. Framed against the pale moonlight outside, a dark, human silhouette was standing perfectly still in the snow, staring directly down at him through the glass. Ethan scrambled backward in terror, but by the time he aimed his flashlight at the window pane, the figure had completely vanished into the night, leaving behind only a small brass emblem resting quietly on the snowy outer sill. Framed against the pale moonlight outside, a dark, human silhouette was standing perfectly still in the snow, staring directly down at him through the glass. Ethan waited until dawn to retrieve the small brass emblem from the frozen ground outside, recognizing the symbol instantly as the crest of the town's oldest and most prestigious legal firm. Armed with this definitive piece of evidence, he marched straight into the living room where his father sat staring out the window, placing the cold metal emblem firmly on the wooden coffee table between them. "No more secrets, Dad," Ethan demanded, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. Leo didn't have an accident. Someone was chasing him because of what is hidden under this house, and you know exactly who they are. His father stared at the brass crest for a long, agonizing minute before his shoulders slumped in total defeat, tears finally spilling over his weathered cheeks. Leo discovered that our house sits directly on top of the original town vault, which holds the true deeds to all the local properties, his father confessed in a broken whisper. The town attorney discovered Leo knew the truth, and they threatened to ruin our family if he ever made the documents public. The town attorney discovered Leo knew the truth, and they threatened to ruin our family if he ever made the documents public. As the final words of his father's confession hung heavily in the air, a violent winter storm began to batter the exterior of the house, throwing sheets of icy rain against the glass. Without warning, the lights flickered twice and died completely, plunging the entire residence into a pitch-black, freezing darkness that felt incredibly ominous. Then, loud and clear above the howling wind outside, came the unmistakable, aggressive sound of the front door handle rattling violently as someone tried to force their way inside. Ethan's parents panicked, hurrying up the stairs to check the window locks, leaving Ethan standing alone in the dark hallway as the heavy glass pane of the back door shattered with a loud, ringing crash. Someone was inside the house, moving with aggressive, heavy footsteps through the kitchen, searching frantically for the historical evidence that Leo had protected with his life. Someone was inside the house, moving with aggressive, heavy footsteps through the kitchen, searching frantically for the historical evidence that Leo had protected with his life. In that terrifying flash of clarity, Leo's final voicemail echoed perfectly in Ethan's mind. "Whatever you do, left the basement." He finally understood that his brother hadn't been warning him about a physical threat hidden downstairs. He was instructing him to use the basement as a secure fortress to keep the truth safe from the people who wanted to destroy it. Chloe suddenly appeared at the shattered back door, having seen the dark figure enter, and together they sprinted toward the kitchen hallway, just as the intruder turned the corner. Grabbing Chloe's hand, Ethan pulled her down the wooden basement stairs, slamming the heavy door shut behind them, and throwing the deadbolt into place, just as a heavy shoulder slammed against the outside panel. Working furiously in the dark, they dragged the massive iron chest across the concrete floor, pushing it over a hidden floor compartment Leo had cleverly constructed beneath the central workbench. The heavy wooden door upstairs groaned under another violent impact, the wood splintering loudly as the corrupt town attorney finally forced his way through the frame and descended the stairs, his flashlight beam cutting through the dust. "Give me the journals, Ethan, and this all goes away," the man demanded, his voice dripping with malice as he stepped onto the concrete floor, cornering the two teenagers against the back wall. Ethan stood tall, refusing to show a single shred of fear as he held his old flip phone high in the air, its screen glowing brightly in the dark room. "It's too late," Ethan announced calmly, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "Leo taught me how to configure this old device to broadcast live audio directly to the county police server, and they've heard every single word of your confession and your illegal entry." The attorney froze in absolute shock, his face paling as the distant, wailing sound of police sirens began to echo through the storm outside. The attorney froze in absolute shock, his face paling as the distant, wailing sound of police sirens began to echo through the storm outside. Realizing his entire empire of deceit had completely crumbled in a matter of minutes, the man dropped his flashlight onto the floor, offering absolutely no resistance as red and blue lights began to flash through the small basement window. Within moments, trusted county deputies flooded the basement, quickly securing the intruder and placing him in handcuffs, before escorting him up the stairs and into the stormy night. Ethan's parents rushed down the steps immediately afterward, wrapping their arms tightly around Ethan and Chloe, weaving tears of intense relief that the long nightmare was finally over. The oppressive atmosphere that had hung over the Miller household for the past 6 months seemed to dissipate instantly, replaced by a profound sense of safety and impending justice. The truth was finally out in the open, and the people who had spent months intimidating their family were finally going to answer for their actions. The truth was finally out in the open, and the people who had spent months intimidating their family were finally going to answer for their actions. The following afternoon, a team of respected state historians and legal officials gathered in the basement, watching intently as Ethan stepped forward to finally unlock the secrets of the hidden floor compartment. Using a tiny, intricate brass key that Leo had cleverly hidden inside the plastic battery casing of the old flip phone, Ethan turned the lock of the iron chest with a satisfying metallic click. As the heavy lid swung open, it revealed dozens of beautifully preserved historical journals, original land deeds, and official documents that proved the Miller family's rightful ownership of the historical town center.
The legal officials gasped as they examined the immaculate records, confirming that these documents would completely restructure the town's resources, returning them fairly to the community, just as Leo had always envisioned. Ethan felt a warm, comforting wave of emotion wash over him, knowing that his brother's brilliant mind and relentless courage had successfully altered the course of history. Ethan felt a warm, comforting wave of emotion wash over him, knowing that his brother's brilliant mind and relentless courage had successfully altered the course of history. Within a few weeks, the legal system worked swiftly to validate the documents, completely clearing the Miller family name and establishing a community trust in Leo's honor. The heavy cloud of grief that had paralyzed the household for half a year finally began to lift, replaced by a vibrant, hopeful energy that the family hadn't felt in a very long time. Ethan's parents smiled genuinely for the first time in months, their eyes bright with pride as they worked together to completely renovate the old basement into a beautiful, sunlit study. They painted the walls a warm cream color, installed large windows that let in the morning light, and dedicated the central wall to Leo's memory, filling it with his beautiful artwork, architectural blueprints, and academic achievements. It was no longer a dark place of fear and hidden secrets, but a sanctuary of triumph, light, and beautiful memories that celebrated a life well lived. It was no longer a dark place of fear and hidden secrets, but a sanctuary of triumph, light, and beautiful memories that celebrated a life well lived. Months flew by in a blur of positive changes, and before Ethan knew it, the vibrant colors of spring had arrived, bringing with them the highly anticipated day of his high school graduation. Standing in front of the full-length mirror in his bedroom, Ethan carefully adjusted the bright blue graduation cap on his head, smoothing down the folds of his formal gown. His eyes drifted to the framed photograph sitting on his dresser, which showed Leo standing in the exact same spot 2 years ago, flashing his characteristic, confident grin. The deep, agonizing sadness that used to paralyze Ethan was completely gone, replaced instead by a profound sense of purpose and motivation to live his life to the absolute fullest. He knew that he carried his brother's legacy forward with every single step he took, and that thought filled him with an indestructible sense of inner peace. He knew that he carried his brother's legacy forward with every single step he took, and that thought filled him with an indestructible sense of inner peace. After the commencement ceremony concluded, Ethan and Chloe walked back to their neighborhood, eventually sitting down together on the familiar wooden porch swing as the sun began to dip below the horizon. The whispering woods stood quiet and peaceful in the distance, no longer appearing dark or menacing under the soft, golden hues of the evening sky. "You look so much like him today, Ethan," Chloe said softly, a gentle, genuine smile gracing her face as she looked at his graduation gown. "Leo would be incredibly proud of the man you've become, and how you stood up for our family when everything was on the line." Ethan nodded gently, looking out at the rustling leaves,
knowing that the promise he made to protect his brother's memory had been fully kept, and that they could both finally look toward the future without fear. Ethan nodded gently, looking out at the rustling leaves, knowing that the promise he made to protect his brother's memory had been fully kept, and that they could both finally look toward the future without fear. Later that evening, as the house fell into a familiar, peaceful quiet, Ethan descended the basement stairs one last time before leaving for university the next morning. The room was bathed in the soft, warm glow of a desk lamp, casting long, gentle shadows across Leo's preserved sketches and the empty iron chest. He sat down at the wooden workbench, pulling the old blue flip phone from his pocket and placing it on the desk before him. With a steady hand, Ethan navigated to the saved messages, highlighting the voicemail that had completely altered the course of his life, and pressed play.
Leo's voice filled the beautifully renovated study one final time, breathless, frantic, and filled with a desperate warning. But this time, the words didn't bring fear, chilling coldness, or suffocating grief. Instead, Ethan recognized the ultimate truth hidden beneath the panic. Love is a force that transcends even the finality of absence, capable of guiding us through the darkest storms if we only have the courage to listen. The deepest mysteries of life aren't solved by running away from our fears, but by stepping directly into the dark to protect the people and the truths that matter most. Grief had once been a heavy anchor dragging Ethan down, but through this grueling journey, it had transformed into a powerful shield of resilience, honor, and unyielding strength. A single, quiet tear rolled down Ethan's cheek, but it was a tear of profound gratitude and absolute closure. He looked up at the wall of memories, a serene smile gracing his face as he whispered into the quiet room. "I locked it, Leo. We're safe now, and the truth is free." With a decisive, peaceful breath, Ethan selected the delete option, watching the screen flicker as the message vanished forever, finally allowing his brave older brother to rest in eternal peace as the screen faded to black.